Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Andrew Roscoe, and we're here for yet another episode of my Star Wars show. It's been a while, but Backlog Banter is taking a little bit of a break right now. We got some big things cooking up. But in the meantime, we can't go too long without talking about Star Wars. And Andrew, I'm recording from the fucking depths of Mustafar here. It is so hot. I was thinking, can we get away with a shirtless episode of my Star Wars show? I said probably not. So let's put on the mesh workout top and we'll roll with it. So if I start to sweat, as I told Andrew, if I die on camera, leave your condolences in the comments. But also, while you're down there hunting and pecking around, join our Discord link as usual, right down there in the description, right down there. Between the Discord link and the comments section, you'll find the subscription button and the bell to ring for notifications. So just come engage with our content. All kinds of exciting things happening. Andrew, before we get into today's exciting topic, we should talk about this right here.
Oh yeah, my book's in the other room, but yeah,
That's fine. We're reading the same book. Just imagine that Andrew is holding up literally this thing right here. This is Star Wars Shadow of the Sith. Frankly, it's a Star Wars book that I was like, hey, cool, it's Luke and Lando, and they go on to Exegol. Beyond that, I don't really know the premise, but here's what's important, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a quote-unquote My Star Wars Show book club episode. And here's how it's going to work, all right? You're going to read the book or not, I don't care. But all I really care is Andrew and myself reading the book, because we're going to have a discussion, and if you want to share your thoughts, you can. We're going to record this episode. I'm going to say it week before Andor. So whatever date Andor comes out on, 7 days before that is your deadline. To read the book, leave your thoughts, we'll talk about it. I just want to give you ample warning, because this is more, Andrew, this is more pages than I read of all of my assigned reading books from last year's English courses combined.
Wow.
So, but I can't skim this. I can't skim Star Wars Shadow of the Sith. It's a very important read to me.
Now it's time to find out if you really are illiterate, Abram.
Yes. I'm I talk a big game about my illiteracy, but we'll find out if it's actually true or not. But speaking of big games, Andrew, today we are talking about just that. We're talking about Star Wars video games, and it's gonna be as this show typically is, an ephemeral topic. Here's what I've done, Andrew. I didn't give you any prompt. I didn't really give you any instructions. I just kind of I like to let your creative mind run wild. What I did is I thought to myself, across my 21 years of being, what are the Star Wars games that are the real touchstones in my life? What are the ones that really matter? What do we got to talk about? And I thought about, what are the games that we should really touch on, irrespective of my personal experience? So I was thinking about this. We'll talk about the games that are important to us, and then we'll, as we sort of move through time, we'll touch on the major ones also. Sort of, as for you, for the benefit of you, wonderful audience, kind of paint the picture as to what Star Wars games mean to us, and kind of where they sat in the industry, and kind of where they are now, and where they were. Because I think there's kind of an interesting trajectory for all that. But I think what's going to make this conversation really exciting, and where I want you to take the reins from me, Andrew, is that despite your boyish charm, you are older than me. And so I think we both come into this conversation with different sets of Star Wars games that are really important to us. And so I'm really curious, kind of high level, what's the first Star Wars game that really had some kind of impact on you?
Shadows of the Empire on N64.
Okay.
That's the earliest. I believe that's the earliest. I think it actually came with my N64, or I got it the same day as my N64.
Yeah.
I don't think it was like a bundle in thing, but I remember like my father got me he got me my Nintendo 64. It came with the gold controller, the Toys R Us gold controller one. That's what I got with Super Mario 64. And then the third or second game, because I also had Diddy Kong Racing. The third or second game, I believe, was Shadows of the Empire. And I just remember plugging that bad boy in, and just right after the races, we start off with on Hoth. We're on Hoth, and we're flying around with our little snow speeders, trying to trip up the AT-ATs. And I'm like probably like 8 or 7 years old at the time, and I have like this controller that I'm using for the first time that day. And it's like I remember, like, you know, it keeps prompting you like fire the tow cable to, you know, trip up the AT-AT. And I could not do I could not like latch it on, and like if I latched it on, I wouldn't be able to do like the full circuit. It would just like break off or whatever. And I remember I just vividly remember just crashing either into the side of the AT-AT a lot, or crashing into the ground a lot. And so it was tough, because I think that's like one of the first 2 levels. And then for those who don't know, Shadows of the Empire kind of picks off at where Empire Strikes Back starts, and then it. No, I'm sorry. No, yeah. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's like it's a weird place. It's like an interquel kind of thing going on, where you're playing as my boy Dash Rendar.
Of course.
And if you guys have ever seen like the polygons for him, like he had like these big bulky shoulders, and like the reason they made that vessel bulky was because that's the only way they can make like rig up his like little character and stuff. It's really funny. But yeah, Shadows of the Empire. I remember like the main music at the menu, the very like dark sounding like foreboding music, and this big like white face, this big grayish face, and like, who is that? That's not one of the Star Wars characters I know. It's Princess Zor, who you find out later on and stuff. But like, that was the earliest Star Wars game I had on 64. And then my cousin, he had Rogue Squadron on 64. I never owned it, but I played the crap out of that game every time I went over. So that's where my Star Wars journey kind of starts. I was a little too young still for like Super Star Wars on Super Nintendo. That was a game that I just missed. So right, I want to say 1997, 8-ish is where my Star Wars video game journey begins, after I've already seen the films at that point, the original trilogy.
Yeah, the Super games are interesting because I think that they are annoying to play. I had, because they came to Wii Virtual Console, I had Super Empire Strikes Back, and I remember booting up and being like, I can't do this. I remember being so disappointed.
I heard pretty hard. I never played them, but I heard like they're notoriously, that's like that era of games like Lion King, where it's like, just make it hard because this is the only game you're gonna have, so you better like have as much replay as you can.
Yeah, that's what it was, and I couldn't do it. But I think Shadows of the Empire is actually an interesting one to start with because, and I think you can speak to this better, Shadows of the Empire was kind of like a big Star Wars event because that had the book, right? And that is sort of, from what I understand, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of positioned as a big moment in Star Wars because this was obviously post trilogy, prequels. So that was kind of an early like immediate multimedia push from Star Wars. And I think that's a really interesting chapter in this whole story we're weaving for the audience.
Yeah, I actually, I do have the book. It's around here somewhere. I do have the book. I got it like probably back in 2007. But yeah, when the game came out, I remember like someone told, like one of my friends in school said like, oh, there's like a book that goes with it. And like, if you read the book and then you actually play the game, like they kind of overlap where they cover different things from different points of views. Like the game is mostly just, Dash Rendar basically, right? It's his his point of view of the events. But then the book covers a little bit of Luke, a little bit of Leia, a little bit of no, those mostly just those two. But like for example, the climax of the game, like the big, like the skyhook, the big the thing at the end, which is like, it's where Princess Zor's at the end, like the book leads up to, it's like our Dash Rendar and then like Luke in the book, they kind of like culminate, like reach the same thing at the end pretty much. So it's like, if you wanted the full picture, you would have to read, I think there's comics, there's a couple of comics I think that tie into the game, that tie into the book. So if you wanted to like understand the full story, you would have to have, read and play pretty much everything, like part of the event tie-in.
Yeah, I would love to play that game. I'm sure that by merit of sort of its ambition for N64 hardware, probably doesn't hold up super well, but I'd be really curious to try that, and actually the Rogue Squadron games, which I've played none of, which seems like a huge oversight for me because it's like it's an arcade starfighting game, and I love Star Fox. I'm sure I would love particularly Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader, which was a GameCube launch title. That's the one I would really love to play. Have you played the other ones?
I've never played that. I don't know if we talked about this before. I missed out on the GameCube. Like I was a PS2 kid, and I just completely missed the entire catalog of the GameCube. It wasn't until like I got a Wii that I barely went back, so it was like backwards compatible. So I missed out those games. But I'm surprised that you haven't played 2 or 3 because like you love Star Wars, you love GameCube, and I just figured those. I figured by
That's
now,
enough.
Like, yeah, I figured you would have.
Yeah, those games are just inaccessible. Like the original has been ported to PC, so that's super easy to access. I would love for 2 and 3 to show back up somewhere, and there was going to be in the legacy of the many canceled Star Wars games, which is probably something we'll touch on as we get deeper into the episode. Yes. There was going to be sort of a trilogy release of those games with extra content on Wii, which would have been very cool. Yeah. But where I want to take you, Andrew, it means that we're going to have to go back in time because there's a title I know is very important to you and that I played recently that we'll have to touch on. But that was before before the game I'm about to mention, which was my first Star Wars title. And that was actually something I'm going to do a prop comedy for here, because we're talking about, hold on, let me snap this piece back into place. It's going to be worth it. We're talking about Lego Star Wars. And this is one
That's
of
awesome.
2 Lego Star Wars sets I've built fairly recently as an adult. Jean and I built both of them. This is a real piece of craftsmanship, to be honest with you. It's a lot of effort. I didn't really realize that Lego sets are kind of for adults now all of a sudden. But this is a complicated thing to put together. And it was sort of a fun way to reconnect, not only with Lego, which I loved, but sort of the whole ethos Lego Star Wars. This is a big nostalgic year for Lego and Star Wars, I suppose, with Skywalker Saga and everything. But putting this together reminded me of the sets that I would constantly berate my parents for and build when I was a kid. And because of that, it made perfect sense that they would get me the Lego Star Wars game. And we're talking original Lego Star Wars, meaning that we just had the prequels. Because initially when these games were released in the 6th generation systems, most people think about, the 7th generation complete saga package, right?
Right.
But when I was playing these games, I didn't have that. I just had the first game and the second game on PS2, but it's really that first one that is super special to me. That was really one of the first games that I was able to like truly understand and play myself. Because I remember I had a couple games. The first game I ever had on my PS2, which is my first system, was the Ubisoft tie-in to the 2007 TMNT movie. And I remember a great first game. I remember like being able to do some of it, but thinking the game was too complicated for me. I'm like 4 or 5 of this time, so I'd watch my dad play it sometimes. But when I got Lego Star Wars, that game was just the perfect level of accessible fun that capitalized on basically the only thing I did with my time, other than kind of like try to play my PS2, which was play with Star Wars toys or build Star Wars Legos. So getting into that game was just special because I really lost myself to both of those titles, and then again to the complete saga. When you're a kid, you have zero money, you play with what you got, right? I played those Lego Star Wars games so much. I don't think I ever 100% completed them though, which is funny. But I remember there's just certain things in the games I would love to do. I would love to go to Kashyyyk because there's this one area where battle droids would spawn constantly. And so I just play as a clone and pretend I'm in the Clone Wars, just like killing these completely dumb. I'm in like one room and it's just the spawns are fucking busted. So enemies keep walking in. There's no challenge. There's nothing to really do, but it was just such a fun extension of what I loved beyond games. And I still think that's such a wonderful licensed project. That was so smart of those companies to come together and create that experience that only got bigger. I would probably argue too big with Skywalker Saga, but those first games, then the compilation, which I played a ton of on Wii, actually, and on DS, are very specific nostalgic titles for me, not only because of what they meant to me, but what they meant to my family, actually, because there were very few games I'd ever play with my parents. And Lego Star Wars were some of them. To this day, my mom will talk about, oh, I remember collecting all the studs. She'd destroy everything and want to get that True Jedi meter filled up. So there's just a lot of memories tied to that first game in particular, but it kind of extends to all of them, even the one that nobody talks about, which is Lego Star Wars 3: The Clone Wars. And I don't know
that's the only one I never played, honestly. Yeah. That's the only one I never played.
I'm sure that it's fine. I remember thinking it was super cool as a kid. And I remember I told my mom that my dad wanted it for his birthday, which is obviously not true. They both knew it wasn't true, but they just humored me and got me the game so I could
never talk
give
to
him.
Other. They'll never talk to each other. They'll never figure it out.
Yeah, but those games are really, really special. I really love those.
I remember when the first Lego Star Wars game came out. I didn't get it at like release, but I'm pretty sure I got it within the month that it came out because it came out like in the summer, right? I think I want to say like summer of 2004.
Well, here's the thing about it. It was pre-Revenge of the Sith. It beat Revenge of the Sith by a couple months, so it would have been earlier in the year, I think. But the point being, if you wanted the narrative of Revenge of the Sith, you could get it early in this game.
Oh, in that case, okay, never mind. I didn't get it with because I remember I saw Revenge of the Sith and then I played this game. So yeah, I didn't have it spoiled for me. I think this was the
Yeah,
same issue also with the actual Revenge of the Sith game that came out. I think didn't that come out like a week before I think the movie did or
probably.
something?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
If I okay, so I remember I got it the summer that year. Okay, let's just say that year
Sure.
it came out. I got birthday money. I remember because my birthday is in August. That's how I remembered. So it was that summer. I remember I went to GameStop and the option was like I had like enough money for like one game. It was either Lego Star Wars or I think it was Resident Evil Outbreak File number 2, which is like a Resident Evil spin-off. And I was like, I like scary stuff, but like I like Legos, I like Star Wars a lot. I guess I went with Star Wars. And I just remember I think the hub is Dex's Diner, right? Isn't that the main hub, I think?
Yes. Yeah.
And I just remember like once I remember unlocking like the characters for like the different levels and then going back as my favorite. I would play as either Darth Maul or General Grievous, just extra lightsabers flying everywhere.
Yeah.
And I just like kind of having like my own like I was like I want to say 14 or so, but I remember just having my own idea of kind of like role playing it sort of, or
Yeah.
like I would just insert these random characters, like maybe we're doing Revenge of the Sith as Kit Fisto the whole way or something. Maybe he doesn't die when the Emperor, kills him during the events of that movie and stuff. And I remember just going just sometimes I wouldn't even do the levels. I would just fight people in Dash's Diner and just or Dex's
Sure.
Diner and just cause mayhem. I think you go outside right to like the parking area where you can like see all your vehicles you built and stuff. And I I don't remember it as fun. I mean, it's not as special to me as it's special to you, but I do remember that was a moment when it came out, and I think that was probably yeah, that would have been the year before Battlefront 2. If I'm
Yes.
doing the math correctly in my head. So I
Or
remember
was it? Or was it the same year?
no, it couldn't have been the same year.
Because what year did Revenge of the Sith come out? That came out 2005, right?
Hold on, I'm doing the math. Oh, you're right. Because I moved that
Yeah.
year. I'm thinking of two different places.
I believe it's the same year. Big year.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. That yes. Okay. I'm like putting like the like where was I when that came out? I'm like, oh yeah, that checks out. So but yeah, Lego Star Wars is really dope. I didn't play the second one when it came out. I played them once they were together on 360 when they did like the
Sure.
combined saga. That's how I ended up actually playing Lego Star Wars 2, which is funny because it's older than the prequels. But anyways, besides that, I played it when it was the complete edition, and I remember I played that on my cousin's Xbox because the PS3 version didn't have trophies, but the 360 version had achievements. And I already had like that like craving for achievements, so I made sure. So I played on my cousin's 360. We tried to get all the achievements for all the studs, find all like the little kits, all the little parts and stuff, and that was a great time. So I never played 3, so I can't say anything about that. But yeah, that's where I'm at too with Lego Star Wars.
Andrew, I was gonna go back to the early 2000s so we can talk about the game, but we're already in 2005. So let's just prolong it a little bit longer. Let's talk about Battlefront 2 for a second. And by extension, Battlefront 1 if you want. There we go. My copy, if you give me a second, I'll jaunt over a couple states and grab my physical copy. But we can talk about Battlefront 1 also by extension, but really my love is with 2. Even though I think there's
absolutely
a lot of interesting maps and like particular mechanics, like being able to go prone in some of those classes that I actually really do love from Battlefront 1 that didn't carry over. But that's getting really into the weeds. Battlefront 2, I can literally close my eyes and describe to you like where each command post is for the majority of the maps in that game. Like, I'm not sure that there's a single game on the planet that I know better than Star Wars Battlefront 2. There was a period of time in my life, and it was a long period of time in my life, where every day after school, every Saturday with my cousin, we would play Battlefront 2. But what's curious about it, Andrew, is that I didn't like it at first. I actually couldn't even play it at first because I was a young kid. I think got this as a gift from my grandparents or whatever. And I was playing a lot of Lego Star Wars. So I remember trying to play Battlefront 2 and but I can't attack with square. What's going on? There's too much shit going on. I don't know how to move. I can't figure this out. So I remember very quickly like just stopping playing it. But then must have been just a couple of years later, I revisited the game and just fell in love with it. This is certainly one of my favorite games of all time, easily in my top 5. It's probably top three. It's in my top. I just love this game so much, and I think that what's special about it is that it's just like one huge celebration of the saga. There's so much here to really dive into. There's so many maps and the ways that you can cross units from different eras into the maps. All of the fun different modes, like the big ass Jedi Sith hero battle you can have on the Mos Eisley Cantina and the surrounding town of Mos Eisley. Like, there's so much from that game that I remember very clearly. The 501st campaign,
Oh,
those
so good, so
those
good.
monologues you hear as
It's
there's
like
like,
a battle journal kind of
yeah,
thing. Battle
it's
diaries, yeah.
it's a really special game, and I think it still holds up very well. What's interesting about it, though, getting older and looking back on the game, having played more games, so they're just ripping off Battlefield. Like, the core gameplay and even the classes, it's just Battlefield Conquest, but it's Star Wars, and I think that's really special and interesting, and makes it even more peculiar why DICE themselves didn't just make Star Wars Battlefield in 2015, but we'll get to that game. Um, but yeah, this is another one where just like it's seared into my head. Playing with my cousin, playing by myself, my favorite maps. Go literally, I can play this game and get hundreds of kills and not die playing a map just because I I know it so well. There's no possible way for me to be challenged by it anymore. But I don't care because it's a comforting game to return to when you know it that well. And when it's such a clear reflection and encapsulation of why I love Star Wars, the
Hmm.
locales, the characters, being able to, as you're saying, role play in interesting ways, like I would spawn as a clone trooper and pretend that this is a named trooper. When they die and I respawn, I'm a different trooper, right? I mean, there was so much room to let your imagination be projected into that game. And they just really let you have fun with it. All of the little hunt modes we could play as the Ewoks or whatever. They really, I think, went above and beyond to make the game weird and celebratory. And I just think it still is fucking awesome. And if you buy it on Xbox Series X, by the way, you get the original Xbox DLC. So if you only play the game on PS2 as I did, if you buy it on Xbox, there's going to be content there you've never seen before, which is a really cool treat when
Oh,
I got my Xbox. So I just love this game a whole hell of a lot.
that's really cool. Yeah, I remember I got this game for Christmas that same year it came out. I asked my parents for like a bunch of like game stuff, but like this was the only thing I actually got. It was like I wanted Final Fantasy 4 on Game Boy Advance. I wanted a PSP. I was like, I want to throw all these things, and I'm probably not gonna get any of them, but if I get like a couple of them, I'll be happy. And like I think the only thing I got was an iPod Nano and this game. That was the only thing I got for Christmas was this game. And I just remember just diving straight into just the whole 501st campaign, and just we're going through you know I think of for the chancellor,
Yes.
watch those wrist rockets, and like all the little like battle like jargon and commands and stuff. And oh my god, I absolutely love this game. It's I remember the year after, I believe, was when I got my PS3, and I was finally able to play it online like back then. And it took a long time to find a match, but like there were people playing this game, and it was just a really surreal experience, like playing online with other people. And like I don't think I had a mic. I don't even know if you could like talk to other players, but I just remember, depending on the map, like there was this one part in Kashyyyk that I like where I'll get like on a raised platform, like near
Yes.
like opposite from the beach. There's like a raised platform area. And I was just like what you say, hunker down and just kind of just like, take pot shots, like snipe and stuff. I remember I love the conquest mode, like the whole galaxy conquest where you go from planet to planet, and like my Cheeto and like, tattoo, like the little voices like
Yeah.
telling you like as you select the map. And like it's kind of like a chessboard thing where you go from planet to planet, and then you can just kind of see like the grid of like these are your planets that are in blue, and then here's like the enemy controlled systems in red. And I just, the whole narrative with the it's always stuck with me is the when they're on Felucia and they're talking about how like Ayla Sakura came to like save them and stuff, and like it's like none of us could even look her in the eye, like because like the whole like
Yeah.
order 66 thing, and just like which is weird because like, I guess it goes against canon now because they knew about it ahead of time, and you have to retcon that and stuff. But like just the for coming off of Revenge of the Sith earlier that year, and to kind of just get that extra like little kick of Star Wars, and like especially from a narrative but also gameplay perspective, which is just really great. I can't say enough great things about it. Shame pandemic never got. Oh, I forgot. I loved the space fighting in space.
Yeah,
I think I might have enjoyed that a little bit more than the actual ground combat for me personally. I remember you told me like you didn't like the controls, or
I
you
couldn't
weren't.
figure it out.
Yeah, and I can understand as a little kid, like yeah, like unless you know how like up and down and side to side, I can see how that's like disorienting. But I love the space combat, just going straight into the hangar, disabling the shields, and then going back outside and just like going into like a dogfight and stuff. Like that was for back when this game came out. Like there wasn't like COD wasn't really a thing yet, and like
Yeah.
this was kind of your kind of like to scratch that itch, is like that force on force kind of itch. So yeah, Battlefront 2 is one of the goats. Shame that pandemic never got to stick around and get that third one out, but
It's funny you say that actually, because people are working to recreate that game. I mean, Battlefront 3 is one of the most open secrets of. There are so many canceled Star Wars games that people know so much about. 1313 is the other big one, but
yeah,
Battlefront 3 was so close to being complete. People sort of haggle over the semantics of exactly how complete the game was when it was canceled, but the game was finished, and it ended up, for people who don't know, it ended up going in all these different directions. Like the narrative ended up being an Elite Squadron on DS and PSP. A lot of those gameplay mechanics were in both Elite Squadron on PSP and the other one, Renegade Squadron. That exit, there it is. Yeah, their ideas lived on, but a lot of things like seamless ground to air and all kinds of stuff that was going to be in Battlefront 3 is dead. But there's this mod for Battlefront 2 on PC, which, by the way, that game's scene is fucking crazy. You can still jump in multiplayer on that very easily. But there's a whole dev team right now dedicated to building. It's called the Battlefront 3 Legacy mod. It's basically a 100% conversion mod that brings the physics, the levels, the units, the mechanics of Cancel Battlefront 3 to Battlefront 2. And it's really ambitious. You can play it right now. I have. It's very, very cool, and it's very faithful. It's based entirely on leaked builds and conversations with ex-pandemic developers. Like, it is Battlefront 3. And I actually interviewed, when I started writing for Retroware, I interviewed the development team behind that mod. And they're just really passionate about the whole project. So I highly recommend people who love Battlefront go buy the game on Steam. It's always on sale. And the vanilla experience is great. It's actually some features in the Steam version that aren't on console, like XL version. You can play with literally hundreds of units that the 6th gen console just couldn't possibly render. But the modded experience for the game, Battlefront 3 Legacy and beyond, is really, really interesting. So it's worth checking out. And it's quite. I'm an idiot when it comes to computers. But if I can get the mods running, anybody can get the mods running. So it's worth checking out. But Andrew, let's go back to 2002 for a second here.
Yes, let's do that.
Let's talk about it. What game from this year should we talk about, Andrew?
The GOAT, Abram. The GOAT.
KOTOR.
There you go.
There it is.
I don't even have an Xbox anymore, Abram. I don't even have a 360 or anything. I still have this game because I refuse to let go of it.
It plays best on Switch, I think.
I have it on Switch, on my phone, and on Steam.
Nice. Andrew, what's your personal experience with this game?
So this was another game. Okay, so when this first came out, it was an Xbox exclusive and of course PC, right? But like I didn't play with PC, and I didn't have an Xbox at the time, but my cousin had an Xbox. And also my neighbor, who I really didn't talk to, also had this game, which that quickly changed once I found out. Believe that, okay? So I remember my cousin borrowed it from his friend, and I happened to be over one weekend, and I was like, "Oh, like, what are you playing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm playing this Star Wars game," and I'm like, I remember looking at the box and being like, "Oh, that's cool." Like, I don't know what this is, and so I think I was like 14 or 13 at this time. That was like around the time I played Battlefront 2. So I remember he's on Taurus. I can't forget how to pronounce it. Taurus. And he's just like, I was like, oh, it's like Coruscant. He's like walking around and he's like just having these conversations. And then like, he's like, oh, like, I'm like, do you have a lightsaber? He's like, no, I have like this sword thing. And I'm just like, oh, that doesn't sound fun. But then like, I kind of stuck around with him longer. And then we got off planet and then we got to Dantooine and he gets to choose his lightsaber. And then like, that's like when the game like really took off. And I was like, oh, like this is really cool. But then he had to give it back to his friend. And so I didn't get to see it anymore. But when I moved, remember I told you I moved that year, right? The same year that Battlefront 2 came out. My neighbor had a kid who was probably about 10 or 11. I was like 15 at this time. And like I just remember like the kid would always like talk about games or be outside with his brother or something. And they were talking about Knights of the Republic, and I'm like that kid has Knights of the Republic. Like, oh, so like when I heard him talking about it, I talked about it, and he's like, you want to come over and play? And I was like, yeah. And so I went over to my neighbor's house, and then I finally saw like the completion of that game. I didn't own the game until about 2007 when I got my 360. Very briefly I had a 360. And I went over to my neighbor's house and we played the game. Like every day I would go over, like how your experience with Battlefront 2, like after school. That was my experience too. After school, like once he got home, because he got home like later than I did, I'd go over and we continue with the story. And that's my experience really. I just love how much world building is in KOTOR. It's just, you have the Pazak mini game, which is not important, but that's just cool that there's like space poker essentially. There's the swoop bike races, which again, not important, but it's cool that there's like basically just have like this little mini game and stuff. And then just I guess because it gets so far away timeline wise, you can have like all these different like factions, and there's like gang warfare on Taurus, and there's also like this imminent threat of a Sith, and it's not just one Sith Lord, because we've only ever seen like one at a time. There's like legions of Sith Lords, and it's like, oh, like this is badass. And like there's no stormtroopers, but there's like Sith troopers with like this chromed out like black armor, and it's just like it took Star Wars like as I knew it at that point. Like this was like about around Revenge of the Sith, and it's just like here's just more of everything. And I was like, this is the coolest thing. Like this makes me want to, like, I wish I lived in the Star Wars universe, because it's just like there's like all these interesting characters from all these different backgrounds, all just living their lives, just doing their own things. And it's just like I talked to you before, like I more than the movies, I just love the idea or the universe itself of Star Wars. So I don't know if you want me to gush anymore. I can if you want, but that's kind of my initial experience with KOTOR.
Yeah, so KOTOR is probably the greatest achievement of any Star Wars video game, I think, just because of what it then gave to the universe as a whole. A lot of Star Wars games were tie-in or tie-in adjacent. Even Battlefront 2 ultimately it walks in the footsteps of the Skywalker saga, which is totally fine. But for things like Shadow of the Empire and then this, but obviously this is a much more impressive game, tried to veer away. And I think it's the Star Wars games that really tried to do their own thing that are most interesting. The Jedi Knight games are also kind of like that. But I think that this is the ability of KOTOR to craft the old Republic era is even more impressive and important to me than what Jedi Knight was able to accomplish, for instance, even though I think those games are quite cool too. Dark Forces, Jedi Knight, all of that. I playing it finally, because I never owned any Xbox systems until I had a one very briefly, because all of my friends in high school had them, so I was like, I have to have so I can play with them. But I really had no engagement in the Xbox ecosystem until the series consoles. So I bought KOTOR. I'm like, this doesn't play right to me. It was when it came to Switch that I was able to really digest it better and get into it and understand it the way that so many others do, and really love it the ways that others do also. Because I think it's just sort of, it's like this interpolation of everything we love about core cinematic Star Wars, but blown out to a whole new scale of player choice and put in this really unfamiliar place that nonetheless feels so Star Wars. Like obviously they're the touchstones and it's in the universe, but it does feel very foreign, and there's something quite cool about exploring the concept that the Star Wars timeline that we know is like is like mostly the span of Luke
30.
Skywalker's human life,
Yeah,
right?
about 30 years. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's fine. That's interesting, but there's so much more. And I think KOTOR's ability to take us all the way back is really impressive. And it's a BioWare RPG. So KOTOR
Great
really
story
has,
writing.
yeah, it has two things that I love. Western RPG dialogue trees and narrative, and a lot of shit for you to pick up. If there's one thing that I really like about Western RPGs, it's killing a dude, taking everything he has, opening every drawer and every cupboard, and just everything you have is mine now, right? So I think the gameplay loop is still good. I do think that the combat is quite cumbersome. Um, if the KOTOR remake ever comes out now, which is unfortunately been casted to jeopardy, we'll see what they do with that. But nonetheless, I think that KOTOR is just such a achievement storytelling. Your ability to sort of weave, and because it's kind of back in the popular zeitgeist, I won't spoil kind of your situation, the narrative, and everything, but kind of weaving your own identity and the relationships you build and who you choose to meet and what you choose to do and how your party develops and your forced alignment and everything. Like there's so much nuance to this game
Yes.
that it's still daunting now. I still think that it holds up. Gameplay falls aside as one of the defining Western RPGs still. And I think it's just a testament to what BioWare used to be. And it's just a wonderful testament to the strength of that, of just a Star Wars IP. So it's an amazing game.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how the when you start talking about like the dialogue choice and Western RPG stuff, like your party members are just they all come from like so different backgrounds, not just like
Yeah.
backgrounds, but even like just morality wise. Like you have Karth, who's kind of just like the paragon of like what the Republic is, and being
Yeah.
like, I was betrayed by my previous like commander or whatever, and like I'm just here like and like I love when like you'll do like make a decision that's like morally ambiguous, and like your party members will just kind of like chime in and like call you out on it. Like I don't know if I would do that, but like okay, I'll like I'm along for the ride. I guess I would just whatever. But like I just I love how because it's easy to just be good or evil or whatever, and you kind of just like, oh, like this affects this stat or whatever. But when you have like your characters kind of like voice their opinions, project onto you, like that's not what I would do. It's kind of like the telltale they'll remember that kind of thing, right? Where
Yeah.
like everybody disliked that or stuff. It's like the early version of that, but like it's it's just it kind of and then you have those moments where as you progress like they'll start to open up to you, right? Like it's something bothering you and it's like something like oh, I'm not ready to talk about that, but then like give it 2 hours or another planet visit, and then they kind of just like open up and it feels much more natural than if you try to just like force that dialogue all at once and like all these dialogue trees, right? It's kind of like you're building this team kind of like Mass Effect, very early, right? Because it's before Mass Effect, right? But it's
Yeah.
kind of like similar premise where you're putting together this party, right, of characters, and they just have these different ideas of like like they have their own problems too. Like you have Mission, right? Mission Val, who basically she's like an orphan and raised on the streets of Terrace, and she's like like this gang, I forgot if it was the Volkers or whatever. Oh, I can't remember the name, but like they just all have these backgrounds and these specialties, and you can like you can spec yourself out, but you can also like spec them out, like kind of adjust them to how you want them to play, and it's just like I think when this came out like 2002, like that's like a lot for a game
Yeah.
of that of that time. Like that's a lot of like customization, a lot of like just very great story writing. You really do care. Like I played pretty much every single outcome, every single ending, but like I still like when I betray someone, like I do feel bad in a way. And then sometimes I'm kind of like yeah, like that's right. Like that's what like I know I'm being kind of vague because I'm trying to avoid story spoilers, but it's I it's just a phenomenal game. I can't really think of anything. I mean, KOTOR 2 comes kind of close. KOTOR 2 is much more RPG heavy, like really RPG heavy. I'm talking about like into the systems RPG heavy,
Yeah.
but its story, its writing is just not as good. But I want you to find that on your own, Abraham. I want you to find that out on your own.
Yeah, I have the game now on Xbox. I was thinking about buying a Switch version, but I just don't know if they fixed the issue. You can't beat the game yet. Um,
That's insane. This much
yeah,
time, yeah.
I've never I've never seen
didn't they tell people like, hey, like, why don't you do this workaround in the
Yeah.
meantime? Like, you can just do this thing instead.
I've never seen so many different people have so much egg on their face in one situation. Like, how many reviews mention that?
Mhm.
So how many people beat the game before they reviewed it? How did Aspire ship that out? Who decided that this is the company to do the KOTOR remake? You know, there's just so many questions that I think that one situation is sort of a microcosm of. But nonetheless, I do. This is sort of a sidebar now, but I do think that Aspire, despite clearly the sort of the workflow or management issues, whatever they're up against, they're a really cool force, no pun intended, in the game space right now for Star Wars stuff.
That was pun intended. You know that was pun intended.
I'll take it. But they're what they have done to bring back the Jedi Knight games and Racer and bring back Commando and Force Unleashed and all this stuff is really noble and interesting because I think it's a budget way to re-experience in a more modern format these really seminal Star Wars games
Right.
that I think kind of draw into comparison. I'm a defender of the EA era Star Wars games that I want to talk about, but I think sort of draws into contrast the breadth of creativity and experience that was of this era, and that's kind of sadly gone now, and it looks like it's going to be recaptured with the umpteen million Star Wars games in development right now. But yeah. So both shout out and finger wag to Aspire, I suppose. Um, but I want to jump forward again, and if we have to go back, we can. But I'm just too excited. We got to get right. We got to get right to it because for me, Andrew, there's a holy trinity of Star Wars games.
Okay.
Lego Star Wars, Battlefront 2, Force Unleashed.
I knew it. I saw it coming.
Now, Force Unleashed is such a special game to me that the first and only episode of my Star Wars show classic, as I'll call it, was me talking about this game. This is a cool one to me because it sort of snuck up on me, I suppose. Again, I was a kid, didn't have any money, so I just got it for Christmas one year, and I'm not even sure I asked for it actually. I think my parents just were like, Star Wars game. What does Abram want for Christmas? He's gonna want this, right? So how I remember getting it and doing that first mission as Darth Vader on Kashyyyk and being like, what the fuck have I got in my hands here, right? This is awesome. And keep in mind, I was playing the Wii version, which is actually very different than the 360 and PS3 version. It's a different developer even, and I think the better version. There's actually far more content in that one.
This was back then when like different versions for different systems. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I want to buy that. To bring it back to Xbox just for a second, the version of Force Unleashed they put out is an HD remaster of the Wii version. So it is now the only way to play a lot of that content that was never in PS3 and 360, which I came to learn when I played the 360 version later. That's the only way to play it in HD, and now you can play with that motion control and everything. So it's again another quite important release. But beside the fact, any version of Force Unleashed, I think it was this. Its sequel too, but I think its sequel is not great. I think Force Unleashed 2 is fine, but these are like the last, in my opinion, the Old Republic MMO notwithstanding, at least in the console space, one of the last big hurrahs of original storytelling for Star Wars in video games. This sort of moment of let's rally around this new, different story that non-canon from the jump didn't really make a whole hell of a lot of sense or it fit in the timeline really. Kind of like beginning of the rebellion, whatever, but then what happens to Star Killer is dead, he's a clone, whatever. It's ambiguous, right? It was just this creative Star Wars adventure. And with Sam Witwer, you got Star Killer. You're going around, you're flailing your Wii Remote nunchuck. There's this real sense of power fantasy there, just in the Force powers. I still think the Force powers have never been better than Force Unleashed. I know a lot of people will point to like Jedi Academy or whatever, which is cool, but there's a real power fantasy to that in particular. And then some of the set pieces like pulling down the Star Destroyer and everything, right? Like
yeah, I remember that.
It's a badass game, and it's also quite a mature one. I remember being quite sort of weirded out by like the Jedi you meet all over the places. The one I forget the name of like the trash planet, but you meet the little guy who's on the long
He's like
spider
Doc Ock
legs,
kind of.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
Or the like the creatures that Shakti and Maris Brood are surrounded by on Felucia and all of this stuff. Like,
Oh, with like the bass, right?
yeah, it's so inspired and like blinding Ram Koda on the board of the bridge and throwing him at the airlock and then finding him later. Like the game was certainly of its era. It's certainly a gritty, quote unquote, gritty seventh generation Star Wars game. But it was just so imaginative, I think, in where it took the universe and what it was willing to do. Obviously, it's a lot smaller scale than the KOTOR didn't invent its own era in the timeline or whatever, but it
Right.
had a spirit of play about it that I really like. And they just can't get over the satisfaction of picking up a stormtrooper and throwing them out a Bespin window. And they just fall to their death. Like that, no Star Wars game, I think, captured that quite the way that Force Unleashed did. And it just had a really memorable cast of characters. I remember one of my first video game crushes was Juno Eclipse. Yes,
I knew it. I knew it.
100%. It was just, again, like KOTOR, it endeared you to this cast immediately. But there's also those touchstones of Vader's trawling around here. You run into, in the Wii version, you meet Leia on Kashyyyk and all these things. There's so much going on here for what is kind of a basic hack and slash. And I still do think it plays well today. It's just another very special, quite nostalgic for me, given when it came out and getting it for Christmas and endlessly replaying that to all the different costumes and trying all it out. But another very, very special and I think important one of the last hurrahs for LucasArts before it was shuttered and now revived as Lucasfilm Games. So, what are your memories, thoughts on Force Unleashed?
My memories of Force Unleashed actually predate Force Unleashed a little bit because I remember the Game Informer issue where they revealed the game was like in development. I remember the cover. I think it was Darth Vader, and I remember just this was still like this would have been the time when I was much more like video game aware. Like this was like I was about I want to say 17 or 18. I think I forgot exactly when I was out of high school already, I think, but this was around the time when I was actually interested in like the games industry as a whole, and so I would just devour Game Informer issues like every month. And I remember just reading about how like they approached LucasArts like, hey, we want to make like this game and stuff, but like I think it proceeded. I think it started as early as where Revenge of the Sith was like wrapping up, because I remember in like the interviews with George Lucas how like the deleted scene of Shock T, like she was supposed to die on the invisible hand, whatever the ship is called, the General Grievous ship, and she doesn't. They took that scene out because they had already approached him about like using her for the game, and so this would have been like a couple of years before like the game even came out. And so I remember reading that interview or reading that Game Informer article about it, and like how they approached like they wanted to come up with like a Sith name for a Star Killer.
Yeah.
Merrick? I forgot his name. What's
Galen Malik is his actual
Malik. Okay. And like they're like, oh, we want to use like the Darth title, and then like Lucas was like kind of like okay, we can some dumb name. I think it was like Darth something. And
Darth Icky is the name that he
suggested.
There
you go. That's right. It's like Darth something. And they're like, never mind, we're not going to use that. We're just going to go with Star Killer, right? And so like I just remember when you talked about that, I thought of like that article first, and then finally getting my hands on the game. Right, the part you're talking about with Kashyyyk, I remember just like kind of using the Force at first, and like it was kind of like hard. It's really hard to use, at least on the PS3 version, because that's the version I had, and it was just like it was like you would use a box, and then you kind of had to like hold the analog stick and like move it, just like you had to like control the height and also the direction at the same time. And it didn't feel right. I remember it took me a long time to get used to it, and so it came to a point where I just didn't really use the Force powers. After a certain point, I just attacked, because trying to use the Force and like it was just I don't know if it's something with the engine or something with the PS3 controls where it just like I know what you guys are trying to do here, but it's not like it makes sense on paper. It doesn't make sense so much in like actual like practice. And so I remember like picking up crates and like hurling them at stormtroopers, but sometimes it wouldn't go like in the direction I would want. It would target like some other stormtrooper, like I had like an auto lock kind of thing. And I didn't really care for that. I love the story, like are you talking about with like Juno Eclipse, and you're going on your Shadow Run? No, what's the name of the ship? I can't remember. It was like Shadow Run or Shadow,
I don't
something like
remember.
that. It was something like that. And you're just like in secret, right? He has like the secret apprentice because
Yeah.
you want, ambitions to throw over the emperor, but like, oh, but like the empire can't know about you, so like you have to eliminate all the stormtroopers that see you because they can't live to tell a tale about you, which is like a really cool idea of like you're so ruthless that like it doesn't even matter if you're on the same side as like the empire. Like you have to make sure there's like no witnesses, no nothing. And then we have like that really cool moment where, is it okay to spoil it? I mean, it's a really okay. Well, I mean, basically you're found out, and then you get like tossed out into the airlock and destroyed.
You get stabbed.
You get stabbed, right? You get impaled. You get stabbed. And you get sent out, and then like it was like the emperor gone. All right, bring him back in, bring him back in, bring him back in, kind of thing, right? Like you're like saved or whatever, and it's like, all right, like he really thinks you're dead this time. Like, and I get to be like super secret, and like I think you have like that, that dark side ending, the light side ending, depending on what you want to do, right? Because you come across like the emperor is basically orchestrating controlled opposition, right? Which is basically he's trying to organize the rebellion in a way where he can just kind of crush them all at the same time. I think it's been a decade since I played this game, so I'm trying to remember exactly, but I just like the idea of like, oh, like the empire is secretly behind like their own like demise in a way because they're trying to like craft the narrative and get ahead of it, kind of thing. Like I just thought that was so cool. And then like you mentioned, right, we have your mentor, kind of your step mentor with KOTOR, right, where he goes blind, and it's like, oh, like he doesn't know who I am, so I'm just gonna pretend, I'm just gonna like we're not hostile right now, but then like he knows who you are the whole time. He's just trying to guide you in the light, and just there's just a lot of cool narrative ideas I like about this with Shock T. Just you finally do kill her again, and then becomes not canon anymore, which is funny because she's died so many times throughout the series, but in different ways, and now we have an official like death for her, which is funny. But like, yeah, the idea of Maris Brood, right? Her like her apprentice who's like leaning, she's very emotional, leaning to the dark side kind of thing. And that's, first of all, also the idea of like a tie factory is like a really cool idea for a level. I love that how you basically have to go like take out this insurgency that's like taking over a tie factory, and then you have your quick time event fight with Coda, and like a lot of quick time events in that game. I remember,
yes, it's of its time for sure.
A lot of those quick time event inputs, and I feel sad I remember feeling really sad because I think you become estranged from Juno, right? I remember, or she thinks you're dead. I forget which.
It's something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And for a while, like that was the cool like Star Wars game. And I remember when they announced the sequel, and for some reason I was just kind of like, that's not a good idea. That seems weird. Like, because from the two, either ending, the good side or the dark side ending, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And of course, they fixed that, right, retroactively with the clone thing and stuff. And I just wasn't so hot on the sequel.
Yeah,
I didn't buy it, but one of my cousins did rent it back when that was a thing. You could still rent games, and we played it a little bit. And I don't remember. I don't remember if they improved on the Force stuff. They probably did, but it's one of those games I need to go back and actually finish because I never finished it. I just kind of was just turned off. For some reason, I was like jaded and turned off the idea. So
yeah, it was developed very quickly. It was starting from a weird place of what if you're a clone?
Yeah.
Like I think some of the spark of that first game was lost. Even though I do think that actually the combat in some ways is improved. It's reined in. There's a little bit more of a Devil May Cry-esque energy to it, actually, in terms of there being more actual combos and air juggling and things. Like the combat is better, but the game around it was just already starting from such a flawed beginning that I also rented it. I used to be a big GameFly user when I was a kid. And I remember getting it, and I definitely beat it, but I don't remember very much about the game at all now. And I replayed a little bit of it because I have it on Series X now. And I think it does play better. But to me, Star Wars games in particular, that's one of the core spaces in which I'm far more interested in more than just gameplay, because I'm typically so gameplay driven that
Right.
that'll do it for me. But in case of Star Wars, a Star Wars game for me, I really want to be in that universe more, and I just don't think that the narrative of two just makes enough sense for me to care about. Um, and I just didn't have enough time. It was an unfortunate other half that duology. But that first game, I really implore people to play, and I think you should get the Switch version to sort of have the HD traditional control comforts of the proper HD 360 and PS3 versions, but with all the extra content of the Wii version. So
Was this the Star Wars Wii game where you had like a side like multiplayer like versus mode?
yeah, that was Force Unleashed 2, which had
Oh, okay, okay.
something of a Smash Brothers ish fighting mode,
Okay.
which I believe was not very good. I don't think I ever had anyone to play it with. So unremarkable follow-up to a very remarkable game. Andrew, before we get to the sort of the EA Disney era, are there any games that for you are major touchstones we ought to tackle?
Sort of, not really. One of the last games I played in high school was Renegade Squadron. I think I talked to you about it before. I had
Yeah,
the really dope PSP case of Han Solo and Carbonite,
nice.
and it was like one of the first games I ordered online through GameStop's website. And so I remember just playing it when I was in high school, my senior year. I was like the TA for one of my teachers, and I had like nothing to do. So I didn't have Wi-Fi at home, but it was Wi-Fi at the school. So
Sure.
I would just go on. I played it online like every now and then at school, just to play it. And like it wasn't good. It wasn't very good online. But Renegade Squadron. I keep wanting to say Rogue Squadron. Renegade Squadron is dope just because you wrote an article about it. I remember reading about it, about the customization, like all the
Yeah.
cool stuff you can do with in terms of the going through the campaign. It's like the last game I want to say that still had some of the extended universe characters, because it's like narrated by Tion, and she's like one of the earliest Jedi post Return of the Jedi to join Luke's order back when, before everything got like the timeline got wiped out and stuff. So she's a really cool character. She has like these like silvery eyes and stuff. You probably remember from the story maybe, but she's like the one narrating the events of Renegade Squadron and everything. And so I really like this game. I haven't played it in a while, but I just remember you get to use like Boba Fett's ship like into the space mode, and like I think you used to use the Millennium Falcon as well, which you couldn't do in Battlefront 2. You were just, it had regular ships, so you could use like the heroes or like the villains, like primary ship, and so that was cool. But just wanted to throw that in. And
Yeah.
also, I don't know if you ever played this, but my cousin, he had a Kinect on 360, and we did it was like a Star Wars kind of like, I forgot what it was, like some kind of dancing game or something.
Yeah, so it's called Star Wars Connect, and it's a minigame compilation, and included in it is Han Solo's Cloud City Dance Off, or whatever the hell it's called. Yes.
Yeah, it was funny. I played it for one day, and I thought that was real. That was when the Kinect was like newer, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like motion sent, like, so just that.
That game, so I never had a 360, so I never had to play it. Not that I think I'm missing out on a whole hell of a lot. But that game has one of the coolest special editions consoles ever. It's
Is that
it's
the R2D2 360
it's the
with the
R2D2 360 with the
3PO
C3PO
controller?
controller. Yeah.
So cool.
It's awesome for such a bad game, but that I suppose that's how it happens. Renegade Squadron is a really cool game. I played it in a way that you could probably put on my fingers and toes the number of people who have played that game through the PSTV with a DualShock 4. That's how I played it, because I also didn't have a PSP, I only had a DS. And it is a really remarkable evolution of the formula, but it's just obviously, as every shooter on PSP was, limited by the lack of a second stick. So it's got what is sort of the sixth generation, lock on, which is fine. It's fine, but the ideas are wonderful. The gameplay is just hampered by the system.
You do the little thing where you like roll to break the lock, like
Yes.
dodge roll, like, oh man, where did he go?
There are two other ones I want to mention very quickly. The first is Star Wars: The Clone Wars lightsaber battles. Um, there was a period of time when they really wanted to make Star Wars, the Clone Wars games a thing. and
Okay.
they really fucking tried. There's a number of them. Star Wars Jedi Alliance, Republic Heroes was the Clone Wars game.
Is that the top-down one?
Um,
There's like a
in
top-down one I remember on DS, I think.
on DS, I think Republic Heroes might have been top down on DS, but
Oh,
the main console versions were kind of the ones that they were pushing, and that was like the big Star Wars game, and it wasn't very good. I remember liking a lot as a kid because there's just like fun clone trooper segments, but it was a pretty unremarkable action game. But Star Wars Clone Wars Lightsaber Battles was an unremarkable fighting game. And it just so happened that that's the one that I got as a gift from my grandma. And do you remember this game?
no, but when you said fighting game, I remember I played oh my god, the
Masters, yeah.
Masters of Terrace Kasi?
Yeah.
I can't remember the name. But another cousin, not the one I've been mentioning this whole time, a different cousin had it on PS1, and I just remember being like this is weird. I had like logic in my head where I'm like, you have a lightsaber, like you should be killing your enemy with like one hit or something. It was like a fighting, like someone was using Chewbacca, someone was using Luke, but Luke had his lightsaber out, and I'm like, no, he should be dead already.
Yeah, that's a notoriously terrible game. Video Game Donkey just on his second channel put up like a 15-minute gameplay of it, and it was so fucking funny watching him just break the game. And like it wants to be Tekken so badly, but it's just
Yeah,
nowhere near good enough to be anything close to Tekken. But
like very heavy, very slow,
yeah.
just very kind of just clunky looking. Yeah.
But Lightsaber Battles again, it's not a very good game, but I had it. Republic Heroes is one that I just rented from GameFly, but my grandma got it for me as a gift. And I like this to me is so emblematic of the fact that when you're a kid and there's a license you like and you have not very many games, you'll just dive head into whatever the
You
fuck
didn't
you
know any
have.
better, Abram. You didn't know
Yeah.
any better.
And so I think there's something fun about that. Like this, I remember my cousin and I, because my cousin and I, we used to be quite close, play games together all the time, like on the weekends. He would come over to my house, I go over to his. And this was a game we both had, and we would get super mad at each other because like one of us would get way better than the other for a period of time, and it'd just be like, oh fuck you, you didn't like. We were like 10, so we didn't know how to curse yet. But we used to get so mad at each other playing
We
that game.
didn't know how to curse yet.
But
How do you
it
use these words? I don't know.
yeah, it was it's an unremarkable game, but I wanted to shout it out anyway. Trying to think if there's any other one to do a drive by to Bounty Hunter on is it interesting one.
Yes, I forgot about
Yeah,
it. That one's a really cool. That one has some cool ideas.
it's got cool ideas. It is like archetypical sixth generation lock on platforming shooting. Doesn't quite feel very right, but there's like a really interesting bounty system in that game.
Yes, that's what I
Yeah,
remember.
it's very basic. It's like scanner. Does the guy have a bounty? Shoot him with my whipcord.
Tie him
Pick
up,
him up. Yeah,
leave him for
but
pickup.
yeah, it's cool that that game is like voiced by Tamora Morrison, and it kind of fills in the
Oh, I
Jango
didn't know
Fett
that.
character a little bit. So that's another fun one, but it's short, but I think it still says outstays its welcome just because it's sort of the rust on that one. But
It's like a prequel to Attack of the Clones, right? I think it's a
yeah,
prequel, right?
yeah,
I remember like it's not a remarkable thing, but that was kind of cool. Like how you can use your little thing to like cut the grates, like the
yeah,
iron grates. Like it's not a big deal, but I just thought that was so cool because like in so many games you see like these iron grates and like you can't do anything with they're just there, part of the environment. But here you are kind of like you have to like cut it and like, it just made like sneaking around like so cool being able to do
yeah.
that. But yeah, the bounty system, and I remember like you could like jump over enemies and still shoot while you're jumping over. Like it's a really cool game. You're right. The lock on and stuff is like very much like it's like that time period.
Yeah.
But it's a cool game.
Andrew, but now it's time for the final chapter in our saga. 3 different Zoom meetings because my school revoked my Zoom premium, but we're here to talk about the last act of the video, which is Disney era Star Wars games. But it's worth at least just mentioning the ones we lost along the way in this sort of transitionary process.
Like in memoriam kind of thing.
In memoriam, there's 2 games in particular that I want to mention here. Actually, we're just gonna make it a larger in memoriam for all the canceled Star Wars games I want to talk about because there's a number. The obvious one is 1313.
Right.
And this one was quite clearly victimized by the shuttering of LucasArts and was not nearly as close to complete as Battlefront 3 was when it was canceled, but it was far enough along that the game was officially revealed and we had a long gameplay demo and it was on its way. It's basically Star Wars Uncharted, which is such a wonderful premise.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the only Star Wars Uncharted game to be canceled because Amy Hennig's game Project Ragtag was also canceled. Maybe uncanceled. We don't know for sure that Skydance and Amy Hennig are working on Ragtag again, although I believe it was Jason Schreier who reported that she is. So we'll see if that comes to light. But 1313, this one doesn't. I'm not as busted up over 1313's cancellation as some people are. Battlefront 3 really was my golden cancellation goose, but it would have been really interesting seeing Boba from this, because it was Boba, not Jango Fett, seeing him in the sort of seedy underbelly of Coruscant, but also seeing what Star Wars would do with the linear narrative, ostensibly Naughty Dog gameplay format. So, did you care for 1313 at all?
I remember seeing the when he's like on the train, right? The train card.
Yeah.
I remember. I just remember that, and people were talking about how 1313 refers to like the level on Coruscant, I guess, where it takes place. Like it's like deep, deep, deep down. And I remember just seeing like the footage of it, and I think the first time I remember it though really was like mentioned was like when it got canceled. I think I don't remember how long after it was announced that it was canceled, but for me, like the cancellation definitely like overshadowed any other news leading up to like that moment. So it looked very Uncharted like. I think you're like taking cover behind boxes. It was very reminiscent of the train scene from Uncharted 2, where like you're like kind of like from boxcar to boxcar kind of thing. Like I think he's like was accompanied by somebody else. He has like a mentor figure with him. I think who's like leading him across these like compartments and stuff. And yeah, I don't know much more about the game. I think a lot of people attribute it, like you mentioned, it was shuttered by LucasArts, but for some reason, some people still think like EA had a hand when this was like before that. I think this was before the EA like licensing the exclusivity deal, but for some reason people thought like it had to do with like Disney like shuttering it. But I think this was canceled before that even happened.
My understanding is that it is in part because of Disney. It was the closing of LucasArts. It was the shuffling of the license. It was a business casualty. Regardless of really where the finger is pointed, it was not a cancellation on the merit or lack thereof of the game's quality, but just sort of its situation at a time when the license was changing hands and the studio was going under, which is not where you want your game to be. But to that point, there is a part of me that still thinks that there's a real chance that 1313 came out and it's an okay game, you know? Like just what we saw was cover shooter derivative of its era, and it being Star Wars, I think would have punched it up, but I would be interested to know kind of how 1313 was going to do more than just offer what Naughty Dog had already offered. But we'll never know. We'll also never know, and this is the one that really gets my goose, the canceled Darth Maul Wii game.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's going to be a motion controlled, I think Red Fly Studio is making it, but I could be wrong about that. Darth Maul Wii exclusive, which would have been fascinating to see. But that also never came to light. But that was a separate issue of cancellation. And then, of course, Ragtag, which probably bothered me more because that Ragtag was like, okay, EA is going to finally do something other than multiplayer with Star Wars. And it's going to be with Amy Hennig. Fucking phenomenal, like a S tier writer in the game space. Dead. But
I remember when it got scrapped. I was listening to there was like a kind of funny episode of Games Daily where they were talking about it, and like Gary Whitta was on that day, and he said like he had seen what Project Ragtag was, and he was so bummed because he said like it was going to be something like really like he couldn't go into details, but he said like it was like a really like special idea. And he's like, oh, I was. And he goes off on his British angry rants and stuff. But basically he's just lamented like oh like EA doesn't know like what they're doing, and like man, like that was gonna be a really special product, like they should have done that one. So that made me kind of be more like oh. So hopefully she gets that redemption now.
Yeah, I'll just be curious to see because I believe it's with Skydance, and I believe that Skydance is getting them. Skydance is in a really weird position where I believe they have released no games
I think they just formed this gaming division like just recently.
Yeah.
So
Which
they
is
make movies, right? They have to do with movies or something.
yeah, I don't really know what their situation is, to be honest with you. I don't really know how they've managed all of this. But good for them, I guess. I suppose we'll see if their game's any good in the end. I don't know. I'm really not sure. But
yeah, they do films and animation stuff. It looks like I know
yeah,
I've heard the name before I
right.
heard of the game stuff. So, but
But Andrew, there was a game of massive consequence that released November 2015. Star Wars Battlefront. Now, this is a game that I think is of critical importance to Star Wars and to EA and to really the entire industry because I think it signaled right away that EA was not the right company to have the license for Star Wars. Now, here's the situation. This game comes out a month before Force Awakens does, I believe. It's November that year. Force Awakens comes out in December.
okay.
At this point, my only contemporary system is a Wii U, so I can't play it. This was the game that made me get another console, the non-Nintendo system, because I had to have it. Couldn't afford it until it was January, and I basically sold what I got for Christmas that year to buy a PS4 and Star Wars Battlefront. But
this was the system seller for you.
For me, it was, yeah, because I got to play at my cousin's house who did have a PS4. It was sort of similar to you in the KOTOR situation of I remember being at my cousin's house and being like, hey, do you want to play a Battlefront? Like, huh? And
sure, I guess.
and playing it and being like, this is remarkable. The fidelity of this game is remarkable. And it is. I mean, EA and DICE were using this technique of like photography becoming, I forget what they call it, like phototelemetry or whatever. I don't remember what they call
it. They got like access to Skywalker Ranch and were able to go in and basically just scan like all the original models like from throughout the years of like what they made and stuff for the vehicles.
Yeah, and it shows. I mean, the game is beautiful to this day. And that fidelity was kind of the selling point. It was like the game sold on the back of its fidelity and the fact that it was called Star Wars Battlefront, when on a mechanical level, it has nothing to do with Battlefront before it, which again is peculiar to me because this is DICE. They make Battlefield. Now they can just make Battlefront, right? It seemed like the natural conclusion, but I think probably in the interest of making the game more accessible, because it went on to sell like 13 or 15 million copies. This was a mass appeal game. And because Battlefield is not a hardcore, it's not fucking Arma or something, but it is a more deliberate military shooter than like COD or whatever, right? So I think they said, what if we made a more arcade experience? And they did. And it launched that on content with an expensive season pass. And it was not well received. I will always remember watching an angry review and being like, oh, okay, fine. Like the game's bad. I don't have to worry about the fact that I can't play it, right? Because Angry Joe just ripped it to shreds, I remember. But then playing it myself was like, no, Angry Joe's a fool. I have to have this. And I played like 150 hours of Star Wars Battlefront 2015. I am a adamant defender of Star Wars Battlefront 2015. I think that this game, if it were called something different, it would have been a lot more successful. I think they really made a massive mistake tying it to such a beloved and specific gameplay formula and then delivering something that was quite antithetical to it. Because it's not Battlefront. It's really not. It's a completely different, far twitchier shooter than even DICE makes beyond Battlefront. But that co-op horde mode is excellent. My cousin and I would play that for hours trying to beat it on the higher difficulties. And when you would shoot a stormtrooper and their body would ragdoll believably, and you would see the burn mark on their helmet from the blaster, you were just like, this is a level of being in the Star Wars universe that I've never seen before. And I just think that there's a real merit to that. the game is certainly style over substance. I wouldn't contest that really. The multiplayer is fun, but it's also a clusterfuck. Especially by the time that the DLC maps were there, and they were just like there were corridors on some of those Bespin maps where literally you were not going to get down the corridor and get to the control point
Like no man's
because
land.
because the DICE put so little effort into balancing those maps that you were not getting the objective. But nonetheless, despite its flaws, I think that there's a really interesting game there with the orbital assault, with that offline mode, with just that feeling that you're really in the Star Wars universe. It's not Battlefront, and it should have had a campaign. The season pass shouldn't have cost $40, but I really like this game quite a bit. What's your experience with this title in particular?
So okay, so the funny thing is I didn't play this game right away. I don't remember what was going on exactly. I don't know if I was in the same situation as you
Hold
where
on,
I didn't.
Andrew. Tucker Hazel, you're on my Star Wars show.
Oh God, I hate Star Wars. Bye.
I got a call from Tucker, and it was too good of an opportunity. He's
I
he's caught. He's now officially part of my Star Wars show canon. But Andrew, no more digressions. He's hung up the phone. Star Wars Battlefront 2015.
Tucker cameo there. I didn't play this game right away. I don't remember if I was in the same situation as you where I didn't have a at that moment current generation console, or what exact, or maybe I was really busy. I think that's when I started university. I think I was when I finally got into university. I think I was just really busy. But I played it, I want to say about at some point before Battlefront 2 came out, because I was at my again another I have a big family, another cousin, different cousin, not any of the ones I mentioned before. You wouldn't know because they have different names, but he has it on PC, and this was when I believe they added the VR side mission. There's like one VR side mission, and then I got to experience that in VR, and it was just like it was beautiful. I remember playing that, and I just kept like expletive of just shock, where it because it was I was like
it's very cool.
I think it just works because I was sitting down at the PC, kind of how I am right now, and just the headset, and then like the controls in my hand, and it's like you're in a cockpit, so it's like very similar situation. You're sitting down within in the game and stuff. I think that's where VR works the best, is when you're like in a seated position within the game. But I digress. So I just remember doing that VR mission. I'm like, this is like the future. Like this is so cool, especially because it's Star Wars. I've always wanted like either to have a lightsaber battle in VR, or to basically fly a cockpit, and we'll probably get to that later with Squadron and stuff. But afterwards, we did play a little bit of the traditional Battlefront, and I just remember it was a Hoth map, and I thought it was okay. I wasn't that into it because I think what you said were like, I think it's first person only, right? Was it only first
You can
person?
go to third. I'm not sure. I don't remember if that was patched in because I had the game months later then.
Okay.
But
I think I played it in first person. I had the same kind of like complaint that you had, like this isn't Battlefront, this is just Battlefield. Now, I do like the Battlefield games. I have played several of them, and I'm like, this does feel a little more like that. Yeah, this is DICE. I can tell this is DICE. This is a DICE ass game. But I just was like, it doesn't. It looks beautiful. It looks really cool. The VR mission was dope. It looks great. I just for some reason was just not sucked into the gameplay. And so that's just kind of where I'm left at. And then we get to the infamous Battlefront 2 eventually. But
yeah, let's just talk about that one, because if Battlefront was sort of a harbinger of things to come, Battlefront 2 is just an absolute fuck up.
Did you ever see the Reddit thread, the original Reddit thread about that?
I think I probably did, because I have a very interesting. I did something with this game that I've never done before since.
Oh, okay.
I was basically peer pressured by people I didn't know on the internet and people I was in communities with to not support the game financially. I didn't torrent it. I didn't do any of that stuff. I went to Redbox.
Okay.
And I got the disc from Redbox and I kept it. And here's the situation. You can do that. You're allowed to do that. Redbox basically has, because they know that people just lose the discs or forget or whatever. They basically have a system wherein you keep it for X number of days. it adds up a tally at the end of it's like at the end of 3 weeks. If you haven't returned it, you just pay, and that it's just yours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, doesn't mean you get it for $60. I think it's like $75. Like they make a little profit off of you.
Oh, wow.
More aptly than the profit off of my parents, who rented it for me. And I remember my dad was not particularly happy. He was like, well, why did this cost so much more than it's supposed to? But I had it in my head that I had to make some sort of principled economic stance and not support the microtransaction practices of Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now, in hindsight, I think that's stupid as hell. Because ultimately, I would be very surprised if a lot of the people in the trenches were like, yeah, man, what if we fucked up our game with bad microtransaction practices, right? And that's a much different conversation, but I would rather still give my money to the developers, because it was probably Patrick Soderbergh, I think. Steven Soderbergh, Patrick Soderlund was the guy who ran EA at the time. Like, I don't think it was the people at DICE who were making the decision to like basically ruin their own progression.
Right. They weren't. I remember like the Reddit thread that I mentioned. I remember it's like one of the most infamous Reddit threads, because I think it goes like, I think it had like the most comments, the most votes or something of all time. And it's like this person ranting about how Darth Vader is locked behind like like he's like the most iconic, one of the most iconic Star Wars characters, and he's like locked behind this wall of like time or like microtransactions or something. But I remember in the comments section, there was like developers who wouldn't give their names, but like yeah, like this wasn't our idea. Like this idea about like the loot box or like whatever this is like done by like a separate like department at EA.
Yeah.
They're the ones who kind of like, oh, like we're gonna add this, and like you have to add this to the game and kind of thing. So it wasn't a creative decision. It was more of a company different like economic department basically.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I would have just wanted to just buy the game outright, give DICE my money. Not sorry, I know my dad watches my Star Wars show. Sorry for making you pay an extra $15 to buy me Battlefront 2. It was just like that was like peak 16-year-old Abram making his stand, and like it was just so dumb in hindsight. But that was, I think, when it became crystal clear that EA was the problem, and that they really ruined what is otherwise, especially now, a really impressive game. People always talk about the No Man's Sky recovery, but like year 2, year 3, Battlefront 2, as they're like by the time that the support was totally wrapped, was a completely different game. Like, I think that it's remarkable what DICE was able to do, and it's a shame that they stopped support. I think the game could still be thriving right now, because if you remember, it was free on Epic Game Store, and so many people downloaded it that the servers crashed like 4 years after release. This is in 2021. I remember writing about it for CBR, and there was just, I think, a lot of recognition that despite EA's corporate fuckery, DICE made what is as high fidelity as Battlefront 2015, but far more mechanically interesting. There's a lot more going on there. There's a lot more maps. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more offline content, especially now. A lot of it had to be patched in later, but there's a real wealth of things. And when that progression system got fixed, when the content for the film started coming out and all these other free updates, because there was no paid season pass for the game, it got to a really, really strong point as a multiplayer title, to where I now have the game across several platforms. And I even, to try to put the right karmic energy back out into the world, bought like the $40 celebration edition or whatever to get all the skins and whatever. The way that Star Wars Battlefront 2005 is a celebration of Star Wars, I think Star Wars Battlefront 2 2017 is that also now. But it was so mired in just EA muck, for lack of a better term, that I think it really harmed that game irreparably.
Yeah. Tough act to follow later. Okay, so I didn't again. This was another one I didn't play right away. I think I got it whenever they added the Sith trooper to the cover with the red looking stormtrooper.
Yeah,
right?
that's a celebration edition.
Okay, that's the one. That's the version that I got. I think it was like you said, like $40 or so. And I immediately just went straight into the campaign. I was like, I'll get to the multiplayer. I do that with Call of Duty too. Like I always play the campaign first, and then I'll get into the multiplayer because I know if I do it the other way around, I'm not going to come back to the campaign. I'll just have moved on at that point. And I remember like before it came out with I always butcher her name, Janina
Gavenkar.
Gavin Gavanker, I think.
Yeah, Kar.
The
She
actress who plays Iden Verso, essentially.
Yeah.
I remember she came on stage and she announced like she was like the main character and like, oh, there's like a book coming out for Inferno Squadron, and like
I read it.
Did you? Is it good? I haven't.
It's no better or worse than most Star Wars books that come out, to be honest. I liked it fine.
That's a safe answer. Abram. And I remember like it was like a big deal, like they like doesn't have a campaign and stuff. And so I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds cool. And so like I didn't get to it right away, but like when you mentioned that the $40 one came out, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I like the idea we're playing from like the villain side. And then it does it because they can never commit to it. I saw the heel turn coming like miles away, and then when he got to there, and I was just like, "Why? Like, it's okay to be bad." I was like, even if you just treat it as like you're misunderstood or like you really believe in whatever it is you're fighting for. Like why did they have to like make it like, oh, she's a good guy or whatever? Like halfway through it, I'm just like, just commit, guys, just commit. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so they didn't do that, and I was like, like I was whatever. I enjoyed the story for the most part, but then like it did like the weird time jump, and it had to do something to do with Kylo Ren. I guess I was kind of confused by the end of the campaign a little bit.
So that was not there originally. Are you talking about like where we plays like old Iden?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, that was released separately as like a DLC expansion. For free to the campaign.
That actually makes more sense because it did feel kind of like weirdly tacked on.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. So yeah, there was that experience. I want to read the book, but I'll get around to it one day. And then I remember playing a little bit the multiplayer. I think I got, again, this happens to me a lot where I can't, when it comes to multiplayer games, it's hard for me to focus on just one because something else will come out and interrupt me or like just distract me. But I remember like just playing a little bit of the multiplayer. I think you could like equip like these little slots where you could equip like these like passive effects, right?
Yeah, the star cards.
There you go, the star cards. I remember. Okay, so yeah, they made a big deal where like it was like the loot box thing. You can get like all these cards or whatever. Like sometimes there were ships, sometimes there were like decals or paint jobs, sometimes there were actual characters and stuff, I think. And I kind of just I meddled a little bit with it. I never paid for anything like aside from the actual game. And I was just like, okay, like this is kind of cool, but like I can tell like this game wants me to like really get invested because like I had like the most basic of loadouts, the most basic of characters, and I'm like this is the kind of game where I know like it's gonna want to compete for my time, and I'm just I don't know if out of stubbornness or something, I'm like I'm not gonna do that. I was like I wanted to play. I think for the most part, I just settled that Call of Duty is always just going to be like my mindless multiplayer game in the background that I'll play when I don't really feel like thinking or doing anything like special. So I was like, okay, like this is kind of cool, but I'm out. So I basically just bought it just for the campaign, really, which is all I care about with Star Wars is just the lore and the story, not so much the multiplayer combat.
Yeah. I mean, the campaign's okay. It's cinematic and impressive visually, but I think you're right about the narrative just being whatever, which is too bad.
Because, I like the idea though that how they had like the Emperor as like a contingency plan. I like that with the I can't remember what he calls it, but it's like, hey, like if you're watching this, it means I'm dead. He has like the monitor on that I think it's I don't know if it's a droid or a person, but it has like the monitor basically like superimposed onto the face. And it's like, hey, like if it like this means I'm dead. If I'm dead, that means like the Empire has to go too. Like the Empire can't exist without me, which is like a special level of pettiness I expect from Palpatine. And so what we're gonna do is we're basically just kind of like burn all the crap down. So, but yeah, that's my experience with Battlefront too. I, it's just not what I wanted from like this kind of game. I know we kind of talked about it already, where it's not the pandemic Battlefront. It's just Battlefield dice with a Star Wars skin slapped on.
The thing about it is, I think mechanically, it actually reminds me a little bit of like Halo Infinite on like a theoretical level, in the sense of Halo Infinite was 343 Industries saying, you want a Bungie game. We're not Bungie, but we're gonna give you a game that is a compromise between what Bungie used to make for you and what we made in Halo 4 and 5. In the sense of like Battlefront 2 is a return to a lot of what made Battlefront 2 or OG Battlefront 2 OG. The class system was the same. The pace of combat was a little bit slower, but it was still fairly twitchy. It still had robust customization progression in the 2015 game. Like I think it was a better middle ground, but I think it was just hampered by so much external shit that like it didn't matter. If the hinge of your game is progression, that is so fundamentally screwed. Even by the time you overhaul the progression, like you're missing a huge pillar of what you want your game to be initially. So it's just too bad. But Andrew, then we entered a little bit of a different phase, right? There's two more Star Wars EA games to talk about. But there are also three non-EA Star Wars games. One is Lego Star Wars Force Awakens. I don't have a whole hell of a lot to say about it. I thought it was a good game. I think it's actually one of the better modern Lego games. I think it's actually better than Skywalker Saga. It's a little bit tighter, a little bit more focused, but it's just another Lego game for the most part. But the one I really want to talk about before we talk about either of those two EA games, whichever one you want to get into, is my favorite modern Star Wars game, Vader Immortal.
Oh,
Vader Immortal is far more of an experience in the game, rightfully so. I know Sarah, a friend of ours in Discord, she hates Vader Immortal because she's like, there's no gameplay. Like what it's like you just kind of you're kind of just in a Star Wars story. She's right. It's far more about living out this episodic Star Wars narrative, but to that effect, you get your lightsaber, you get your blaster, you're shooting stormtroopers, you're fighting Vader, you're on Mustafar. It's a really compelling experience. One of my favorite video game experiences, period, because VR makes me so sick to my stomach. It makes me so disappointed, but I can't play games in VR for the most part. But Vader Immortal, by merit of it being so like designed for early VR and being like, let's just guide someone through a Star Wars experience, I was able to play it front to back and feel really immersed in Star Wars. So it's worth a shout out. There's really not a whole hell of a lot more to say about it. It's just kind of an interesting Star Wars story and it's in VR. But which of the big three remainders do you want to talk about?
I guess we'll just get into Fallen Order.
Sure. Yeah. What do you think about Fallen Order?
Again, this is it's a running theme where it's another game I did not get at release. I actually didn't play this until we got the PS5 update for it.
Okay.
So I played the optimized version of this game because I heard like it doesn't run so great on previous consoles. So immediately I was like, I waited for a price drop, and then with the PS5 update, like it was like the perfect time to finally play it. I originally was turned off by it when I first heard about it because I heard it was just Star Wars Dark Souls, and I was kind of like, I don't want to feel frustrated.
Yeah.
And I've kind of come around on that now. Like I finished Elden Ring today, and like I absolutely love that game. That's very much a From Software style game. But so I got it. Yeah, when the PS5 update came out, I purchased it, and I'm like, okay, so it's the story of Cal Kestis, and he's just kind of like a Jedi in exile and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I see the characters who look like the characters from Rebels, which are like the whatever number, insert number sister.
Right.
And I'm just kind of like, okay, like this is interesting. There's like wall run. There's kind of like you have to like you're like breaking down like warships from like the Path of Clone Wars and stuff, and then you're a fugitive now, and you're being helped out by this person who you don't really know, and like you're kind of just I like the game. I enjoy it. It just feels very, very plain and empty.
Sure.
It's just, and then like I'm not a huge fan of the character or your main character. I kind of there's nothing for me to like connect with or like resonates there. It's just kind of like a little angsty and just I don't know. I enjoy the gameplay. I enjoy like the settings. I love seeing Dathomir. I love seeing I forget the planet, the one that's next to Mustafar, where the base is at. Can't remember the name, but I enjoyed the worlds we saw. I really like that first one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the very first one you go to with like everything has like a very like square blockish like layout. I can't remember the name of the planet, but it's like the very first, it's a green one. It's the green, it's a very like
I don't remember either.
Yeah, I can't remember the names, but like it's just okay. It's just okay. I don't really I wish it feels very barren.
Yeah.
In my mind, when I play something like Star Wars, it's unfair, but I just compare it to KOTOR. And that's very unfair because these games all play completely different. And it's just like it feels empty and kind of depressing, sort of. Whenever we have like these games set between Revenge of the Sith and like A New Hope, like that whole era just seems very like dark and just very like because our heroes have fallen and like their enemies are the ones prospering. And I just kind of I wish I was more articulate. It's just an okay game. I think I'm excited to see what's going to happen because I feel like they're probably going to build off. They're going to work. They're going to bring back what works and then hopefully fix what doesn't work. I just wanted to see more populated places. I love when Star Wars is populated, basically.
Yeah, it's an interpolation of other people's ideas. It's let's take a little Uncharted, let's take a little Dark Souls, let's take a little Zelda, let's take a little Metroid Prime, let's stir it all up and put it in the Star Wars universe. I think it's very clearly Respawn's first attempt at a game like this because they just made Titanfall and now they're making a third-person Star Wars game. Yeah, I would like to replay it. It was my game of the year in 2019.
Really?
Yeah, because when you take a little bit of Zelda and a little bit of Metro and a little bit of Uncharted and you stir it all up and you put it in the Star Wars universe, you're taking three of my favorite things and you're putting in the Star Wars universe, right? So I really like it quite a bit. I think it played well, and I like that it took me to these Star Wars planets with the level of fidelity that we've been getting from a Battlefront, but allowed me to really slow down and explore it and learn a little bit better.
Sure.
And be get a Star Wars narrative again. Now, I wonder if I'd like the game as much if the game came out in 2007 when it wasn't special to do a narrative Star Wars game. You know what I mean? I think that it was helped by the fact that it could be as high fidelity as it was, and the game people wanted EA to be making, so I'm actually quite interested to replay it this fall to see how I feel about it and to kind of calibrate my expectations and hopes for Jedi Survivor, because I have very high opinions of Fallen Order, but there are a lot of people who don't and who share your sentiments, both in terms of its sort of status in the universe and its narrative, but also in terms of its gameplay. So I would like to play it again I'd like to play it again with a different eye. And see.
I did like how like you mentioned right now, like how you get to kind of explore a little bit and like discover stuff. I did like how like you did have like these optional like hard monsters you could fight. I thought that was kind of cool. How like if you were up for the challenge, kind of like a sort of like a Soulsborne style game, like you test your metal against like this, enhanced version of like this creature or whatever. Like I thought that was kind of neat. And then you mentioned like the Metroidvania aspects of it, like having to backtrack. Like now I can access this part of this planet kind of thing. Like I like that for certain games like Resident Evil or like where you're just going through the same areas, kind of like unlocking new parts of like the mansion or the city or whatever.
Yeah.
But for some but like when the planets are just so sparse and barren, like going back doesn't really it's not like ooh discovery. It's more like kind of just like okay, let's go back. And because I feel like you're not moving forward because you're going backwards kind of. And I know that sounds like I'm not saying anything new by saying that, but like it just I don't know, it's just not I didn't really like. I think it's okay.
Yeah.
Like you said, the gameplay, the combat itself, I thought that was great. I thought the combat was great. It was very rewarding when you were able to like nail like parry or like be able to like pull off those moves. But when it comes to Star Wars, and I think because we talked about this, like I care about like the universe itself of Star Wars, the galaxy, the characters and the settings, and like I mean, we do see different planets, but they're all kind of just like this is the blue planet, this is the orange planet, this is the green. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of just like Kashyyyk. I think Kashyyyk was probably the most interesting one for me. I thought
Get Saw
Kashyyyk was
Gerrera there.
Saw Gerrera, but also just the giant like avatar bird thing and like climbing the warship tree and like that was the level that stood out to me the most because I guess it's so lush and feels lively, but all the other worlds that just feel very barren.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair assessment, and I do think that I think there is space for what Guerrilla accomplished with Forbidden West to happen here too, in that Respawn and Guerrilla both tackled a third-person action game for the first time in Fallen Order and in Zero Dawn. And then we saw Guerrilla say, okay, we've made this foundation, now let's make the strong game on top of it that people saw in the first one or were looking for. I, for instance, was really wanting a lot more out of Zero Dawn. And I think they delivered it in Forbidden West from what I can tell. The game won't work on my PS5. I have something for repair. So I'll find out myself later. But I really do hope that when we see Jedi Survivor footage, which I think we'll probably see at that like Mondo Disney like games event that's happening soon. I hope we see a game that looks like it's made by a team with a little bit more experience in that genre. But Andrew, from a low point to a high point, for you at least, let's talk about Star Wars Squadrons for a minute.
Lego Star Wars Squadron is everything I ever wanted in a Star Wars gaming room. Let me take you back to we're gonna wind the time. We're gonna wind the wheel back a bit. Circa 1996 or 97. Young Andy, he goes to Disneyland for the first time. He goes on a couple of rides, your Thunder Mountain, your Matterhorn, all these other names of rides. And then we come across Star Tours. Star Tours, for the uninitiated, is basically just it's the only, at the time, the only Star Wars themed ride where you basically kind of just like sit down in this like room that moves. And on the screen in front of you is a projector, is like a little droid like pilot. And you're basically on the premise is that you're a tourist exploring the Star Wars universe, basically. And you kind of go through all these events, like you go through like an asteroid field. You do the Death Star trench run. For some reason, it's a different Death Star than the ones from the movies, so it's like a third non-canonical Death Star. And you're experiencing all these cool moments, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I've already seen the original trilogy this one. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Right. But like man, like you can only experience that feeling at Disneyland, at Star Tours.
Sure.
And then I told you I experienced the VR mission for Battlefront at my cousin's house, and like if it wasn't for the fact that I probably had like the headset, like I'm pretty sure you would see how teary my eyes were, because it like, without exaggeration, it was a very magical moment for me, Abram.
Sure.
Just because this is like the kind of like from when I was a kid to like what we got now, like the tech has come so far, and it's like it was just like blowing my mind with what we can do. So when EA, after, I think this was this after the exclusivity deal expired, or when we found out? I think it was.
This was before, because this was October 2020 that this game
right
came out.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that it expired, but I mean, like, was this I think this was after we found out that it wasn't
was it
renewed. Okay. Yeah, because I remember where I was when it came out. This was like 2020, I think.
Yeah.
And earlier in 2020 is when we found out about the Ubisoft game that they're still working on. And so they announced like Squadrons is going to be a game, like it's like a flight simulator. I'm like, oh, okay, but it's going to be VR compatible. And I was like, what? Yes. Like they're following through with the vision of like that VR mission they did, like that prototype on Battlefront 1. And so I get the game, I load it up and everything, and like just going into like the TIE fighter, like I can look around the cockpit and it just seeing like where my feet are supposed to be and like the controls, and like it's just like so magical. It's just amazing. And we go out into like a little mission, and you go through the tutorial and stuff. You can adjust, like, can divert power to shields, to speed, or to like offense, and you can do like maneuvers where you can like ease off on the throttle and turn, and like it's just like so cool, so cool.
Yeah.
And it's like the experience I had at Disneyland, but like at home now. And like I'm not in a room full of 20 something people. Like I have the headset on, like I'm in the cockpit. I'm in the cockpit. And then there's a couple of issues with the game. It has a very poor frame rate, first of all. I don't know about, I think it runs fine like when you're not in VR, because you can play the game without VR.
Yeah.
And it runs kind of fine, but in VR, like it kind of stutters a little bit. And you can tell like when there's like a lot on the screen going on, and you'll get like these like weird, like kind of like jaggy screen tears and stuff, like with the headset. And it's like, okay, it's not perfect. And then I try the multiplayer mode. I play the multiplayer mode, and like I just get destroyed because it has cross platform like
Yeah.
multiplayer. And if you don't like the people on PC with their fight sticks and their rigs and everything, and like the fight sticks, right? The fight sticks and everything, the controls and like the whole setup, like you can't compete with that with PSVR. You just can't.
Right.
And so I get destroyed, but I can still enjoy the campaign. And I finally finished the campaign this year, I think about probably like 2 months ago. And it's a really dope story. Like it starts off like during the Empire, but then it takes place right after Return of the Jedi. So like the New Republic is like already being built, and you get to play as like the remnants of the Empire, or it's cool. They have like this infighting thing where like all these different admirals are kind of basically like a civil wars going on. And at the same time, like one of the higher ups is like no, we need to stop fighting each other. Like we need to focus on the New Republic. Like they're making all these gains and stuff. And so it's cool because you go back and forth between, like, you'll do a few missions as the New Republic and a few missions as the Empire, and you're kind of getting like the both sides of this conflict. And then you get to try the different vehicles. Obviously, you get to try the TIE fighters, which are my favorite to actually use, because like the cockpit is circular. And
Yeah.
you have like, you get to have a good view. And then you get to like use like the Y wings and X wings, and like they all have like their different like nuances. Like one's designed like just like in Battlefront, like one's designed for like dogfighting, one's designed for like taking on capital ships, and so on and so forth. And it's the story is really dope. They introduce like a super weapon. I'm not gonna like go into spoilers, but they introduce like a super weapon, and that becomes like the MacGuffin of the game. And like they have like these cool set pieces where like there's like one mission where you actually have to like fly into a like asteroid field, but there's a thunderstorm in the asteroid field. Like there's like, it's like some kind of like nebula gas thing or whatever. And you see like there's like a Star Destroyer graveyard where just chunks of Star Destroyers like floating around, and you still have to dogfight. And it's so cool. I wish you had your VRC legs, because it is the like ultimate like wish fulfillment for someone who loves like the space battles of Star Wars.
Yeah, it's too bad. So I have played a fair bit of it, but I have played it without VR. And it's a cool experience then still, because I can still like recognize how cool it is to divert the power, and how it's still arcadey, but there's more to it than flying in a Rogue Squadron or a Battlefront.
Right.
I think that's really, really cool that they committed to that. We committed to giving us a narrative around that. And I think I thought it was really fun, just like being on the command deck in the Republic ship. Yeah. I think all of that's super cool. But yeah, I tried playing it in VR and like immediately feel sick. Like it just doesn't. As soon as I have to start spinning the cockpit, I'm like, holy crow!
Oh, that's the coolest part. It's like, like you're getting locked on. Like, oh, let me try to like shake them off and like divert like fire flares or whatever. It's so cool.
It is a super cool game, and it's the sort of game that I wish we gotten more of from EA. This sort of let's experiment here, and let's think about what kind of Star Wars experiences can we provide that fans always wanted, but now we've got the tools to provide.
Yes.
Super high fidelity VR game. What made Star Wars games famous? X-Wing and TIE Fighter.
Yeah,
So let's do that now with the technology that we didn't have literally 30 years ago, right? So,
and Lord willing, with PSVR 2 and this next generation of VR, God, I hope they make another one. Please make another one. I don't think it's sold that well. Like, I don't think it's sold very well.
yeah.
Which, I mean, for the technology and everything, like it makes sense it wouldn't sell that great. But I just hope they don't. They have something special here. Like they can actually do pretty well. They've already done one. Like I just hope that they. Hopefully, EA is kind of like, you know what, we have enough resources to do this again. Probably not, but I'm hoping. Like, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
I mean, if you can do 9 million Star Wars games at once, you can do 9 million in one. So give Andrew his squadrons too.
Please. I was about. Oh, speaking of EA, have you ever played Mirror's Edge, Abram?
Yes, I don't like Mirror's Edge at all.
You don't like that either?
No, I don't like Mirror's Edge.
Is it for the same reason? You just get like nauseous?
I don't like Mirror's Edge because I think that the game is only fun when you're on the rooftops. I think when you start doing the puzzle platforming, it grinds its own momentum to a halt. And like I don't even know why they bother trying to put combat in that game either. I'm in the very slim minority that really doesn't like Mirror's Edge because I know that's a very seminal 7th generation game, but like I didn't vibe with it at all.
Okay.
So,
I thought maybe because like that, because I know a lot of people get motion sickness from that game also because there's so much movement. Like there's like a mode where like they put like a dot or something like to center your attention, like your vision on something. So I was like wondering if that would work for you. Like I don't know if that's like a accessibility thing for VR where like if you get like motion sickness, if they could like find a way to reduce like the blur effect or kind of like something to draw your eye so you don't feel like
that again, I'm sure some of the people investigating. I mean, actually, the Stanley Parable, when that came out this year, that game makes me incredibly motion sick because not only does your character move quickly, but there's no reticle and you never see their hands. So it's just like a camera in first person quickly gliding places. And like I could play that game for like 25, 30 minutes at a time and I'd stop. So last game, Andrew. It's been a fucking crazy episode of my Star Wars show here. Like Star Wars Skywalker Saga. Frankly, I don't have a whole hell of a lot more to say about this game than I haven't said already. I reviewed it for Ninja Fresh magazine, and that's going to be in people's hands before too long. I did get a free copy of this game from WB to review, so I should point that out. But I think the game is just not finished. I think that it's so clear that there was an intention for Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, and then it got changed. And the game we have is like a mishmash of 4 different games.
Right. So you think you want more of the game, is what you're saying. You say it's unfinished.
I want more development time for them to kind of decide what the game should be. I think there's way too much game. Like,
yes, that's why I was confused. I'm like, what?
No, I definitely don't want more game. I'm just like what? I never even one time upgraded a single one of my skill trees.
Really?
I just feel like
not even the stud multiple like collecting like the draw distance.
No, where I came down on it was just like there is so much game here. Sometimes design by subtraction is a philosophy worth pursuing. And if they just kind of pared back some stuff from this game, I think it'd be a lot stronger because it is very fun. I did have a great time. I laughed consistently. I think its sense of like reverence for Star Wars is wonderful. I think it's actually what I read about in part is like I think there's a lot that like the Star Wars fandom could learn from this game to like love Star Wars and take it seriously, but also be able to joke at its expense, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a really unifying game. I think no matter if you hate the prequels, you hate the sequels, or you hate the original trilogy, even the stuff you don't like from Star Wars, you want to enjoy because it's so endearing and fun. And in co-op, Jean and I had a lot of fun just like going around planets and finding kyber bricks. There's a really good game here, but there's too much really good game. It's like if you asked me a whole pint of ice cream. Like, well, if you'd given me like a bowl of it, I'd be stoked. But you make me eat all of it. I don't know what to do with all this ice cream. I don't know what to do with all these planets.
No, yeah, I agree with you, Abram. I remember like seeing like the trailer that came out for like what 2-3 months before, and it's like you get like the shot of like Poe run like in third person like shooting at the rooftops at like some some first order troops, and like it looked like when we saw it before the game came out, like it was ambitious in a good way. or like, oh, you get to like, there's this different kind of game modes, like you're shooting, and it's not just like a fixed camera like past Lego games. Like I think you mentioned it before, where like the design of what Lego games were changed around when Marvel superheroes came out, and it's like we can do all these kind of things now that we have like the hardware for it. And so like to see like the adaptation of, let's revisit those previous Star Wars locations, but now with like better tech and like more content. And it sounds good on paper. It sounds exactly like what you would want, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of get into it, and at some point it kind of just feels like a chore. You're just kind of like, there's like these side quests you can do. You talk to like the local citizens of like in Mos Eisley, like they have like errands for you to like do things, and you like, but I think when you realize, like, you see how many collectibles, like, oh, like you'll complete a mission and it's like, oh, like you got these many characters out of this total pool of characters, and like you found these studs or these kits out of these total kits, and it just feels like daunting. It just feels like a massive checklist of stuff to do, and I don't really know how you can fix that, because like essentially what we're asking for is like, it's a less is more kind of situation. But at the same time, like I get it, because this is really like a celebration of everything Star Wars. You get like some of the most obscure characters as unlockable characters. There's like I forgot the name, but my friend knows this one better than I do. There's like a pink astromech R2D2, KT or something. That's a KT something like that. And like apparently like this character is an actual like Star Wars character made for like, it was like made in canon for like a cancer patient or something like that. Like there's like all this obscure kind of like on the fringes, like Star Wars, like your Gleb Shido characters basically.
Yes.
And it's cool. Like it celebrates that, and like I love the idea and the spirit of the game. I don't love the busy work of the game.
Yeah. Less is more, and more is just a lot.
More is just a lot. Yeah.
And like, I just think that focus would have helped, because I think about how like sometimes I didn't even really know if I was in a mission or not.
That was so weird to me. There's no like seamless, it's a seamless transition, and you're kind of like, I wouldn't realize it until I noticed that the Jedi bar is not filling up.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh,
yes.
okay, so this, I'm not in a story mission, I'm just in this hub area, and I can't tell because sometimes the story missions are big hub areas, and I'm like, well, like I want to flip the true Jedi bar as much as I can sometimes, and I'm like, and like it's not filling up. Like I collect studs and I don't see. Oh, I'm not in a mission right now. That's why. So it's weird, because it's not like the old school ones where like you go into a doorway. That's mission one, right? You go into a doorway at a diner, and you have like, here's like your, like this is what you're missing, like this is who you can choose as, right? It's just very kind of seamless, and you're just kind of like, it's very befuddling.
Yeah, I just wish it had been more of that. I wish it had been, here is 6 well-crafted linear missions, and then here are 5 open world planets. So 5, like 6 missions, because it's already 6 missions per episode. So what's that, like 35 missions, whatever, I can't really do math, 45 missions, whatever. Curate a linear campaign and then give me not 26 planets to explore, 6 planets to explore. Like you could have done the collectathon thing, but not at the cost of everything else, which is what it feels like. So I still enjoy the game. I think it's fun. I think it's a nice game to chip away at. But like, there's just a real simplicity to those old Lego games that could have been recaptured here, and instead they just like threw literally every modern design idea, cover shooting, character action combos, skill trees, open worlds, side quests, flying, everything. And it just gets to a point of over encumbrance, design over encumbrance, which is too bad.
I think there's an Abram out there in a different timeline who probably got what you're saying, Abram, and he probably wants what you have right now, kind of thing, where it's like, I wish this had more, and it's just like, no, you don't. And it's just kind of like, it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation, where like, if you like, okay, you guys want more, we'll give you more. Like, oh, that's too much. Oh, okay, well, it's like, okay, we'll give you less. Like, oh, that's too little. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a Goldilocks situation. Like, you're trying to find that perfect medium. So
there's also another Abram in another universe who still is playing this game, still looking for kyber breaths.
So you're not going to 100% is what you're saying.
Holy shit. Can you imagine trying to do that, Andrew? I love Star Wars, but there's no chance in hell I'm ever gonna 100% this game.
Yeah, it's just too much.
But Andrew, this has been a 2-hour episode of my Star Wars show.
I'm starving. Yeah.
Yeah. There's literally a standing layer of sweat over my entire body right now because I closed my window and turned off my fan. Like, oh, we're gonna sit down for an hour. Who gives a hoot? Pardon my language. That was 2.5 hours later, but the audience deserves it because we've been gone. And now we're back irregularly. Don't ask me about it. It's gonna happen when it happens. But you know 2 things for certain. We're gonna review Andor. We would have reviewed Andor already because we did the show. Whatever, that's fine. And we're gonna talk about Adam Christopher, 2 first names himself. Adam Christopher, Star Wars: Shadow of the Sith. So read the book. How many pages do we have here, Andrew?
Like 700, I think.
Are you kidding? I don't think I've read 700 cumulative pages of text in my entire college experience.
Check, because I'm not sure.
468.
I'll
So-
think of a different book then. Never mind.
If you read 1 page a day, you would miss out on the book club. So you gotta read faster than that.
I think you have to do what? That would be like what? 10 pages a day, just to no.
Or maybe we all do 1 page a day and we review this next September.
We'll figure out the right cadence. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. But Andrew, thank you very much for joining me. I don't really know what else to say, but you do.
May the force be with you.